All right, let's jump in and take a look at this post I found on Instagram. I want to review the caption and take a look at what's being talked about from a yoga side, and then also give my thoughts on how the post is from a yoga business standpoint. She's probably got something available. So let's go ahead and review it and see what we got. We'll start with the caption. All right, so we got the caption here. Just gonna pop it open on my side. If you're looking to improve your flexibility and haven't found the right routine yet, if stiffness is making your practice difficult, you can access my carefully selected stretches tailored. Okay, so first, I wasn't even expecting to cover the business side of the post first, but on the one hand, I do like that she's, talking about the benefits, right? Improve your flexibility and haven't found the right. So she's talking about a benefit, improve your flexibility, and she's addressing a problem, haven't found the right routine yet, while addressing another problem if stiffness is making your yoga practice difficult. And then she's offering a solution. So in terms of like just the context of this paragraph, I think it's pretty decent that she's touching on two problem points and then introducing a solution, but it has nothing to do with this post. And uh, it's like way too soon. Like nobody knows if she's actually received any value or if they've received any value from this yet. Right away, she's just blasting you with the call to action. Um, I don't know. Wouldn't be what I would do. Okay. So now she's shouting out somebody else. Thanks for sharing. So now it's a brand promo. Okay. Okay. After all of that, so like we got to scroll all the way down just to get to what she's really talking about. I would have put this part up front, right? Working on your splits, especially because on Instagram, like I'm looking at this on the computer, but on a phone, um, if you're just looking at the first line, like you would still see if you're looking to improve your flexibility, that's great, but it's not as specific as working on your middle splits. And obviously there's the image here. So I would want to keep those two things more connected. But let's keep going. Yes, me too. I've been adding some middle splits prep to my classes this week. Thought I'd share some with y'all. So it's great. She's talking about her class and sharing with people online, bringing those two together. That's good. Just FYI, for anyone that needs to hear this, your ability to enter a deep stretch or a challenging hand balance does not determine your worth or greatness as a teacher, nor does it make you good at yoga. I agree with the first part, does not determine your worth or greatness. Sure. As a teacher, I think there is a modern approach where it's like anyone can be a teacher no matter what you do. And that's true in a sense, but I also question like what happened to the days when you had to be exceptional to be a teacher? I don't know where that went. And I think that removing that aspiration and the challenge to get there uh, devalues a lot of teachers and then puts people in this position of like, how can teachers sustain themselves and do this as a living? And then, nor does it make you good at yoga. I would argue it does make you good at yoga because to enter a deep stretch or a challenging hand balance, it's challenging by nature, which would make you good at yoga if you can do it. Um, what she's ultimately getting at here in a sort of roundabout way is if you can't do a challenging handstand, that doesn't make you bad at yoga. That's I think that's what she should be saying, because if you can do a challenging handstand, it does make you good at yoga because you can do a challenging pose. Like the very nature of the fact that not everyone can do it means that you are good at it because not everyone can do it. Um, so yeah, read that a few more times. I think there's some conflicting arguments in here a little bit. There's lots of elements of flexibility that go into achieving a full pancake. Now we're talking about pancakes. So we went from handstand to, or like challenging hand poses, now back into middle splits. The caption's kind of all over the place. But our adductors, aka inner thighs, aka groins, play a huge role here. So right away, I've taught some asana clinic classes. I can get a lot closer to middle splits. I'm about this far off the ground when I'm really warmed up. Um, I've been practicing for 8 years and practicing middle splits for about 5 of that, maybe 6 of that. So I can tell you right now, just looking at the picture, you're not going to get to middle splits like this. Why? Because look at her feet. I don't know if I can zoom in. No, I can't zoom in. If you look at her feet, you can tell, sorry, let me switch over here. You can tell that her feet are flat on the ground. Um, there's no need for this anatomically to have your feet flat on the ground and to do middle split or pancake. And I would argue that you're going to run into an ankle limitation before you run into an abductor slash inner thigh slash groin problem. So if your feet are flat on the ground like this, you're just not going to get to middle split because your ankle can't go that far down, not because your hips can't open that much. So that would be the first thing when I do middle split. Um, I flex my toes off the ground and my feet are in line. My second toe is in line with my knee, which is in line with the middle of my hip. And that will allow your hip flexors to get the proper abductors or adductors. Which one is she talking about? Adductors. That'll allow your hip adductors to properly stretch to help you get to middle split. But if your feet are like this, you're just not stretching your inner thigh as much as you could be, so you're not going to get the split. Let's go back to the other part here. Uh, I know for me personally, this is the biggest barrier for me in terms of depth of my split. I just told her what the biggest barrier is, your ankles. You haven't even reached issues with your hips yet because your feet aren't in the position to allow you to spread wider. Your feet are preventing your hips from getting the work done. My adductors are relatively tight, so here's a little collection of my favorite inner thigh strategies for some juicy opening. Do you think anyone is capable of middle? Now we're talking about who's capable of middle? This post is all over the place. Achieving middle split if they dedicate enough time. Yeah, I think most people can get at least 90% of the way. And then she goes on and says, no, the anatomy of the hip plays a major role. The only problem with this, it's a decent argument in the sense of like, hey, here's some x-rays of different types of hips, and not all of them will be able to do middle split. Okay, cool. Except how do you know which types of hips you have? Unless you go and get x-rays yourself and then get a medical comparison to that of the specific kinds that are generally accepted to not be capable of doing middle split. I mean, who's going to go to that extent just to prove that they can't do middle split? So my argument here is, how do you think most people can't do it because of their anatomy when you haven't even seen most people's hips? And how do we know the design of most people's hips? Like there's lots of x-rays and stuff too, but I would argue if we're going to go the scientific route and be like, here's all these x-rays, then we should be looking at x-rays of people's hips of people who do yoga, not random people who may or may not do yoga. So I think I used to be really on board with this opinion, but now I'm less convinced. And I also think that this gives people a mental out. And it's like, oh, my hips, I can't. And it's like, how long have you been practicing? What have you been doing to train? Are you all the way down? Like, are you sure that you're at a space where the muscle and the tendons and the ligaments have all been worked to their max, and the only thing left is the range of motion that your thigh can move within the hip and the hip socket? Are you sure that's the only thing left? I'm not so convinced most people are in that place before they come to the conclusion that they can't do middle split. I haven't observed that in my 8 years of global yoga teaching. I don't think I've observed any one person who's at that level who is like, yep, I can't do middle split because of my hips. I've had them x-rayed and compared to the hip design that cannot do middle split. And I've worked my tendons, ligaments, fascia, and muscle tissues all to their very maximum, and I just can't do middle split. I haven't come across that. So this opinion, I think, is an out for a lot of people. I'm sure, yeah, most people can't do middle split, but most people don't put in several years of effort either. So, but then again, I've never, I've never put in enough time, energy, and commitment into seeing whether I'm one of those people or not. So it's basically indecision. Let's see here, frog pose, really good. So let me give you guys a tip because I can, by and large, I can do front split and middle split. I've never been like insanely flexible over my life. I was always in good physical shape, but never, well, I was always skinny and fairly athletic, but didn't spend the majority of my life like doing yoga or physically training or fitness training or anything like that. So frog, really good pose. She's got some good lines here. Knees in lines with hip. Roll sit bones upward like goddess pose. Eh, that's all right. I'd be focusing more on spinal extension. Her chin should be down more, so there's less compression on the neck. And ideally, guys, what I found was the biggest mover in terms of levers for me moving forward in my yoga practice was doing yin yoga because it works the deeper tissues that active practices tend not to address. So let's keep moving here. Goddess pose. I don't know why she's facing her front arm. Her upper body looks like she's doing warrior two, and her lower body looks like she's doing goddess. Goddess, usually your arms are like this, and you're looking straight forward. So I don't know why she's doing like that. Hip position seems good. Looks like she's tilting her pelvis down in between a little bit. I'd like to see more tucking. The fact she thinks that from frog pose, you're like pushing yourself up and back. But then she's comparing this, cow pose. Okay, that's different. Drive weight into the drive weight into little toe edge of foot. Yeah, that's pretty valid there. Knees in line over ankles, knees in line with second toe. So it should be second toe, knee, and hip all in the same line. She should be facing the camera, but otherwise looks pretty good. Butterfly position. Shoulders are a little forward here. I'd like to see some more chest coming up and then some shoulders coming back, but overall it's pretty good. Drive thighs away from you, yes, but she's missing a key point here. One sec. Hold feet and pull up against them while pressing feet down into the mat. So one part she's not talking about here is the toes should be curling away from each other like this. Then you can press your knees down into the mat. Tadpole, this is good. Usually tadpole, at least in yin yoga, you're laying down on the chest, but your hips and feet are like this. Knees as wide as possible. I like to say around 90%, 95%, especially if you're doing yin, around 90 because you got to hold it for a couple of minutes. And then pull against the shins to sink bum towards the mat. I'm fine with this, but there's a couple caveats that she needs to mention in here. If you're going to pull your shins like that, you should be flexing your toes into the mat. I don't know why. Sorry. I thought this was showing the mouse on the side here, but her toes should be pressing into the mat, and she should also be mentioning that she's lifting her heart up towards her chin to protect the low back and to stabilize the body. Awesome. Side angle. In side angle, the arm is up over the head like this. It's nothing like this. I mean, all the positions matter. So use the arm to encourage thigh wider. Yeah, you could do that if you want. I'd be focusing more on bringing the hips down towards like her hip should be more coming straight down in the sense of like that's where I'd be focusing. Not that you should be pushing down, but I would be focusing on the width of the feet and driving the hips down rather than pressing the shoulder or the arm into the knee to open the thigh. But that works too. Wide leg lunge. Typically the legs are straight. Side lunge into opposite leg, keeping knees wide. This works, like the alignment works, so I think it's fine, but extended wide angle over right leg or left leg, usually the leg is straight. Hands hold the ankle. The calf is fine too. And I like to emphasize like when you're holding, elbows coming out a little bit because this will give you a little bit more forward fold, which will deepen your stretch into the hamstrings and the quads. Use arms to drive thighs wide. Again, yeah, this is good, but to continue emphasizing here, like you should be lifting up through the chest, right? So if you're spreading your legs wide, but you're rounding your spine, it's going to counteract spreading the legs. That's why people really round their spine in this pose. So she's not doing it, but she's not saying it either. She should be lifting the heart up and pressing the legs back so that you get the lift on the front side of the body, which helps to open the chest, the abdominal, and then the adductors. Skandasana, side one here. This is good. Everything looks pretty solid. Really good asana for middle split? And then, do you think everyone's body is capable of achieving a middle splits with enough effort? Well, I can tell you, I could walk in and like this, I could bring this girl probably halfway closer in about 5 seconds just by turning her feet out so that her feet aren't flat on the floor. Her feet should be on an angle so that her toes and her feet are straight in line across her legs. So that I would say that would be the biggest thing. But overall, it's a decent post. She put a lot of effort into this, spent the time taking the photos, and then adding all the captions on it. The caption in and of itself, I think, is a good effort, but it's all over the place. She's starting with the call to action, then she's mentioning brands. Now she's talking about middle splits. Um, good questions in here. Like, now she's talking about if you're good enough as a teacher, and then elements of flexibility and her personal journey, and then we're going into anatomy. Um, Obviously she's got a lot to share. Obviously, she knows what to talk about on this topic, but it's kind of all jumbled into one. And I think each of these kinds of captions could easily be a post in and of themselves. There could be a post where you're talking about, the groin and the impacts of that and how to concentrate on it in each of these asanas. That could be a post. There's a whole field of people who basically like to say, like, everyone's a really good yoga teacher no matter what. You're not determined by your physical asanas. And there's absolutely no connection there. I'm not really convinced by that. Obviously, some people physically can't because of injury and stuff like that. But for the most part, in my opinion, a teacher should be able to do more asanas than most students because they have to teach students to do those asanas. And the point of being a teacher is being a level above everyone that you're teaching, or the vast majority of the people that you're teaching. Obviously, you're going to get some practitioners that are more experienced, but ultimately, that's kind of the status. Like, you are the teacher because you know more and can do more. Isn't that one of the defining things that makes someone a teacher? Like, so some of this, I get what she's trying to say, but in my opinion, you are good at yoga if you can do challenging hand balances because they're challenging. Um, and I would even dive a little bit deeper into this on my personal philosophy is I don't think there are any challenging asanas or advanced asanas. There's only poses you can do with sthira and sukham, ease and stability. That's it. Those are the only two asanas. Ones you can do with sthira and sukham, and ones that you are still working on. And it's kind of crazy because on the one hand, she's got contradicting arguments in here, right? She's basically trying to eliminate any sort of status or hierarchy by saying, you know what, if you can't do hard poses, don't worry, you're still good at yoga. But the fact that there's hard poses and you can't do them contradicts itself. So she's basically advocating for not having a hierarchy of who's good and who's not, while simultaneously acknowledging things, aka challenging hand balances, that are determinators of who is better in terms of physical capacity. Like, in a sense, yeah, doing advanced asanas means you are physically better at doing some of the asanas. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. Some people are not yet very good at doing poses. When I started out, I was not good at yoga. I am now very good at yoga because I've spent almost a decade working on it. So, like, I I don't know. I don't really agree with some of that in there. I know what she's trying to get at is that people shouldn't be deterred from doing yoga or trying or coming to class or showing up on the mat or attending a teacher training because they don't think they're good enough, right? I think if you're wanting to do yoga and you're wanting to do yoga teacher training, you should do it. Um, but I also think, yeah, there are levels. Like, I ain't about to sit here and be like, yeah, I'm as good as Patabi Joyce or whatever his grandson's name is. Like, I'm just not. I'm very good at yoga. I could probably keep up, but I'm not gonna like he is good. He is much better than me at yoga. It's just a fact. He knows more about it. He can do more. He's been practicing longer. By every metric, he is outperforming me, right? And I get it, right? Social media definitely has this component of like we shouldn't measure people by how they look in asanas on Instagram, 100%. But that doesn't mean we should do away with like a rank. There are people who are better than other people at yoga. That's why they're teachers. That's why they're experts. That's why we go and train with them. So very good post overall. Let's take a bit of a click here. 221. This is one of those accounts that shows all different kinds of posts and stuff. I don't know if this is all the same girl. I've never come across this account before, but I can look into it. If you're thinking about, if you want to look at more stuff like this, or if you are going through a lot of these types of questions and you want me to review them, let me know in the comments. I'd love to cover more content like this. I'm just experimenting, but yeah, let me know if you want more content like this.